When I reached for my phone, intending to inquire about my son Max's wedding date, my daughter in law, Lena, met my gaze directly. With a smile that sent a shiver down my spine, she declared, "Oh, we were married yesterday. We only invited truly special individuals." Her words struck me with the force of an icy drenching. Special people, I, who for the preceding 3 years had covered their monthly rent of $500, had furnished their entire home, and had ensured their refrigerator was never bare. I was clearly not considered special. I stood frozen in the living room of my own residence, the phone feeling as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. I watched my son avert his eyes while Lena casually made herself at home on the sofa I had purchased for them. The delicate pale pink gown I had selected for her bridal attire hung in my closet, unused alongside new shoes and the shattered fragments of my anticipation of being a part of my only son's most significant day. I had spent $200 on that dress, envisioning how I would appear in Max's wedding photographs I would never grace. For weeks, I had meticulously planned every detail. I had set aside funds to present them with $1,000 as a wedding present. I had even informed my sister Diana in Chicago of the joyous news. My home had been scrubbed from top to bottom in preparation for a possible post-ceremony celebration with them. All of this dissolved in an instant, undone by those 4 venomous words, "Only special people." Max finally raised his eyes and, in a voice that sounded utterly practiced, stated, "Mum, it was a very intimate affair, quite small, just the 2 of us and the witnesses." Yet I knew he was not being truthful. I had seen the images circulating on social media. I had witnessed Lena's parents beaming with pride beside the newlyweds. I had observed her siblings raising champagne flutes in toast. I had seen Lena's wedding dress, a dress I had helped finance with the $800 I had given her just last month for her personal needs. I saw everything I was meant to be shielded from. Exactly 7 days after that profound humiliation, Lena contacted me, her tone entirely transformed. The confident woman who had deliberately excluded me from her wedding was gone, replaced by someone desperate, almost pleading. "Renata," she began, her voice quivering slightly as if the world were collapsing. "The rent is overdue. The landlord is threatening eviction if we don't pay this week. You forgot to make the transfer." I remained silent for several seconds, recalling every instance I had rushed to the bank to facilitate that very transfer. I remembered all the times I had sacrificed my own plans to ensure they had a roof over their heads. I recalled subsisting on beans and rice so I could provide them with funds for their wants. And now, after being relegated to the periphery of the most pivotal moment in their lives, they had the audacity to call me as if no offense had occurred. "Lena," I responded, my voice possessing a composure that surprised even myself. "Didn't I caution you that I only assist special individuals?" The ensuing silence on the line was so profound, I could distinctly hear my own heartbeat. For the first time in years, the tremor was not mine, but hers. "Renata," she stammered, "I don't comprehend. We were always special to you. You're like a second mother to me." Falsehoods, all of it, concealed within that saccharine tone she employed solely when she required something, the same tone she had used to solicit funds for the wedding dress, the honeymoon, and the rings, all of which I had contributed to, unaware that I would be denied attendance at the very ceremony where they were exchanged. For such an extended period, I had lived with the pervasive feeling of treading on eggshells, carefully considering every word, every action, every gift, hoping for a sliver of affection from my own son. I had been the epitome of the accommodating mother, the obliging mother-in-law, the silent benefactor who never raised an objection to being treated as though I were invisible. However, that declaration, "only special people," ignited something within me that had long been dormant. I mentally tallied the financial outlay I had made for them over those 3 years, encompassing rent, provisions, presents, emergencies, and fleeting desires. The total surpassed $20,000. $20,000 diverted from my retirement funds, my savings, and the considerable sum my late husband had bequeathed to ensure my final years were peaceful. And all of this expenditure was for what? To be treated as an outsider on my own son's wedding day. That evening, after ending the call, I sat on my bed and wept. Yet these were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of rage, of pent-up frustration, of years of silently borne indignity. I wept for every occasion they had made me feel that my love was a burden, my presence an inconvenience, my financial resources the sole offering I possessed. I wept for the naive mother I had been, for the woman who had lost herself in a relentless effort to be indispensable to those who viewed her as expendable. Upon waking the following morning, a fundamental shift had occurred within me. It transcended mere pain from betrayal. It was something far deeper and decidedly colder. I rose and confronted my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The same weary eyes, the same lines etched by years of unreciprocated affection. However, my gaze now held a novel intensity, an unyielding resolve that had been buried beneath an era of passive compliance. I proceeded to the kitchen and prepared my customary morning coffee, a ritual I had observed for 40 years. This time, however, the impulse to call Max and inquire about his sleep was absent. I did not compulsively check my phone for an apology regarding the previous day's humiliation. For the first time in a considerable while, my own well-being was the day's paramount concern. I sat at the kitchen table, the very surface where I had so often meticulously planned surprises for them, tallied their expenditures, and silently grieved their indifference. Now, this table would bear witness to a profound transformation. I retrieved my checkbook and bank statements, commencing a precise calculation. I sought to quantify the exact magnitude of my own misguided generosity. The monthly rent of $500 multiplied by 36 months equated to $18,000. Food and household necessities, averaging $200 per month, amounted to an additional $7,200. Gifts for birthdays, holidays, and anniversaries, a minimum of $3,000. Lena's medical emergencies, $800. The car loan they never repaid, $2,500. The air conditioner repair in their apartment, $600. The furnishings for their living room, $1,200. $33,400. This was the precise sum of my beneficence, $33,400 squandered from my husband's inheritance, my pension, and the savings I had painstakingly accumulated over decades of diligent work. All that money, so carelessly dispensed to maintain the comfort of two adults who could not even muster the pretense of respect for me. The phone rang, displaying Max's name. Ordinarily, my heart would have raced as I hurried to answer, hoping for a sincere apology and an explanation of a misunderstanding. This time, however, I allowed it to ring through its cycle, once, twice, thrice, before it fell silent. I resumed sipping my coffee as if undisturbed. 10 minutes later, it rang again. This time it was Lena. I let that call go unanswered as well. Shortly thereafter, a text message arrived from Max. "Mum, please answer. We need to talk." I deleted the message without a response. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided to take a stroll. It had been months since I had embarked on such a leisurely walk, one devoid of any purpose related to them. My errands had invariably involved trips to the bank for transfers, the grocery store for their necessities, or the pharmacy for Lena's prescriptions. Today, I simply walked because the inclination struck me. I passed the park where I had often brought Max as a child. I reminisced about the sweet boy who would embrace me tightly, proclaiming me the finest mother in the world. When had he transformed into this man who perceived me as little more than an ATM with emotions? When had I begun to conflate love with financial transactions? When had I started to believe that my own son's affection had to be purchased? Reaching the bank, where I had so frequently initiated automatic transfers, I paused at the entrance. The branch manager, Mr. Cleaney, noticed me through the glass and offered a wave. I had known him for years. He had processed every single transfer I had made to Max and Lena. He had observed my account deplete month after month to replenish theirs. I entered and proceeded directly to his office. "Mr. Klein," I stated, "I need to terminate the automatic transfers I have scheduled." He regarded me with evident surprise. For 3 years, these transfers had been as consistent as the dawn. "Are you certain, Mrs. Richter? Has something occurred?" His concern, I noted, was genuine, far more so than any interest Max had displayed in me in recent months. "What has occurred," I replied, "is that I have finally opened my eyes. I wish to cancel everything, and I also require information on safeguarding my accounts. I do not want anyone else to have access to my funds." While Mr. Klein processed the cancellations, my phone persistently rang. Max, Lena, then Max again. It was as if they possessed a radar system for detecting threats to their financial lifeline. I completely deactivated the phone. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Klein said as he presented me with the paperwork, "I apologize for my intrusion, but throughout these years I have observed your remarkable generosity towards your family. I hope you are not experiencing any duress to make these changes." His words resonated deeply within me. This man who knew me only through bank transactions exhibited more sincere concern for my welfare than my own son. "I am not under duress, Mr. Klein. On the contrary, I have finally ceased imposing pressure upon myself." As I departed the bank, a peculiar lightness enveloped me, as if I had deposited an immense burden within that office. For the first time in years, my money was entirely my own. I was no longer burdened by financial obligations to individuals who viewed me as a resource rather than a person. Upon returning home, my thoughts turned to all the endeavors I had foregone to please Max and Lena, the journeys I had not undertaken to conserve funds for them, the friends I had distanced myself from as I was perpetually available for their crises, the hobbies I had abandoned because every dollar I spent on myself represented one less dollar for their needs. Arriving at my house, I discovered 3 vehicles parked out front: Max's, Lena's, and an unfamiliar one. Through the windows, I could discern movement inside my home. A cold dread washed over me. They possessed keys. I had entrusted them with keys out of faith, believing they would one day reciprocate the care I had provided. I inhaled deeply before pushing the door open. It was time for the inaugural genuine confrontation of my renewed existence. I entered my home and was met with a scene I shall forever retain. Max sat slumped on my sofa, his head buried in his hands. Lena paced restlessly, like a caged creature, while an older gentleman, whom I did not recognize, perused documents spread across my dining table. My documents, my personal records. "What is transpiring here?" I inquired, my voice projecting with a resonance that surprised me. All 3 turned to face me as if I were the intruder in my own dwelling. Lena was the first to speak, her voice laced with the same frantic urgency I had previously detected over the phone. "Renata, thank heavens you've arrived. We need to converse. Mr. Fisher is with the law firm we consulted regarding your situation." "My situation?" The question escaped my lips with a surprising calm. "What situation? I am perfectly fine." Max finally raised his head, his eyes, once those of an innocent child, now reflecting only financial desperation. Mum, we went to the bank and they informed us you cancelled all the transfers. Mr. Klein explained that you also revoked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why you would do this. Mr. Fisher, a man in his 50s, clad in a grey suit and sporting a smile that did little to inspire confidence, approached me, extending his hand. Mrs. Richter, I am Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being and have requested that I assess the circumstances. I did not reciprocate his handshake. Instead, I walked directly to my dining table and gathered all my documents that he had been reviewing without my authorization. These are my private papers, I stated firmly. You have no right to examine them without my consent. Mum, Max interjected, employing that condescending tone he had perfected over recent years. We are worried about you. Your behavior has been quite unusual lately. First, you cut us off financially without explanation. Then you don't answer our calls. We believe you may require professional assistance. Lena moved closer, attempting to grasp my hand with that insincere tenderness she reserved for moments of need. Renata, dear, we understand you're under a great deal of stress. Perhaps the loneliness is affecting you more than you realize. At your age, episodes of confusion are quite common. The word confusion echoed in my mind like an alarm. Now I comprehended their motivation for bringing a lawyer. It was not about offering assistance. It was about deeming me mentally incapacitated and seizing control of my finances. The very woman who had proclaimed they only invited special guests to her wedding was now treating me like a senile elder. I am not confused, I declared with a firmness that silenced them all. I am clearer than I have been in years, and you will all leave my house this instant. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Fisher interjected, his voice adopting the professional cadence lawyers use to project reasonableness. I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have a right to intervene if they believe your capacity to make financial decisions is compromised. They have documented several concerning behaviors. Concerning behaviors? The laugh that escaped my throat was raspy, almost cruel. Such as deciding that my money rightfully belongs to me, deciding to cease funding the lives of two adults who treat me as though I were trash. Lena leaped up as if I had physically struck her. We never treated you badly. You are part of our family. Everything you possess will eventually belong to us anyway. We are simply expediting the process. There it was, the unvarnished truth. All that I owned would one day be theirs. In their minds, I was already deceased, and they were merely claiming their inheritance prematurely. It mattered little whether I had 70 years or 70 days remaining. To them, I was simply a problematic ATM on legs. Out, I commanded, gesturing towards the door. All three of you out of my home. Max rose, his face contorted in that petulant expression of a child denied his way. Mum, we can't just leave. We have obligations. The rent, the car payments, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't just cut us off overnight. Who says I can't? My voice escalated, the first time in the entire exchange. For years I have paid rent for a place that wasn't even in my name. I stocked a refrigerator in a home where I was unwelcome. I subsidized a life that clearly had no room for me. Mr. Fisher retrieved a folder from his briefcase and placed it on my table. Mrs. Richter, we have prepared some documents that could facilitate this transition, a power of attorney that would permit Max and Lena to manage your finances more efficiently. This would merely be temporary until you are feeling better. I took the folder and, without even glancing inside, tossed it directly into the waste bin. The only transition occurring here is yours towards the front door. Lena began to sob, but these were not tears of genuine sorrow. They were tears of exasperation, of suppressed fury. You can't do this to us, Renata. We were counting on you. We made plans based on your support. We bought things, we incurred financial obligations because we knew we could rely on you. Obligations predicated on my money, not on my well-being, not on my happiness, not on my companionship, but solely on my money, I retorted. And now that I have decided my funds are better utilized in my own life, I am suddenly a confused elderly woman requiring legal guardianship. Max attempted to approach me, but I took a step back. He was no longer the child who would run into my arms during nightmares. He was a 35-year-old man who viewed his mother as an impediment between himself and a comfortable existence funded by others. "Mom, we made mistakes," he said, his voice imbued with a feigned remorse. "The wedding was a misunderstanding. Lena was nervous. I was under pressure. We can rectify this if you will just be reasonable again." Reasonable? The word felt acrid on my tongue. Being reasonable entails continuing to fund your lifestyle while you treat me as a stranger. It means feigning that it doesn't sting, to have been excluded from the most significant day of my only son's life. Mr. Fisher repacked his papers with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to rejected proposals. "Mrs. Richter, this matter is not concluded. Your family possesses legal recourse. If you are indeed making irrational decisions due to mental health concerns, a judge can rule that you require guardianship." His words struck me like a physical blow. I grasped that this was not merely a manipulative family visit, it was a genuine legal threat. They intended to declare me incapable of managing my own affairs. "Mr. Fisher," I said, meeting his gaze directly, "I suggest you conduct your research thoroughly before threatening a 71-year-old woman who has managed her finances flawlessly for 40 years, who raised her son single-handedly after her husband's passing, who maintained a household and worked honorably until retirement, and who, until last week, financially supported two perfectly capable adults." Lena ceased her crying and regarded me with a frigid gaze that finally revealed her true demeanor. "This will not stand, Renata. We have rights and lawyers too." "Excellent," I replied. "Engage all the legal counsel you desire, utilizing your own funds, naturally, as mine are no longer available to finance your legal tantrums." The three of them moved towards the door, their dignity wounded, accustomed as they were to not being denied. Before exiting, Max turned to me one final time. "Mom, this is going to end very badly for you. You'll end up alone, with no one to care for you when you truly need it." "Max," I said, a profound sadness tinged with crystalline clarity in my voice, "I am already alone. The difference is, now it is by my own volition, not by your neglect." As I closed the door behind them, I stood in my living room, enveloped by a silence more beautiful than any I had experienced in years. It was the silence of liberation. That night, sleep eluded me, not from sorrow or regret, but from the exhilaration of reclaiming control over my own existence. I lay awake, strategizing my subsequent actions like a general preparing for battle. If Max and Lena desired conflict, I would grant them a war. However, it would be a conflict waged with intellect, not emotion. By 6 o'clock the following morning, I was fully dressed and prepared for the day. My initial destination was the office of attorney Mr. Weber, a man I had encountered years prior when settling my husband's estate. Unlike Mr. Fisher, whom Max and Lena had procured, Mr. Weber possessed an impeccable reputation and specialized in safeguarding the rights of seniors. "Mrs. Richter," he stated as I outlined the situation, "what your children attempted yesterday is unfortunately more common than you might imagine. It is termed elder financial abuse, and it constitutes a federal offense. The fact that they entered your home without permission and reviewed your private documents also represents a violation." His words brought both solace and disquiet. Solace as they validated my perception that I was not irrational, and that the events were indeed abusive. Disquiet, as I realized the gravity of the situation was more significant than I had initially apprehended. "We must meticulously document everything," Mr. Weber continued, "every transfer, every gift, every instance of coercion for funds. We will also revise your will to shield your assets from future attempts at manipulation." We dedicated 3 hours to reviewing my financial records. Mr. Weber whistled softly upon surveying the total sum, $33,400 over 3 years. "Mrs. Richter," he commented, "with this sum you could have lived comfortably, traveled, and enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you entirely financed the lives of 2 adults who did not even afford you the respect of inviting you to their wedding." Upon leaving Mr. Weber's office, I possessed a comprehensive plan. First, I would replace all the locks on my residence. Second, I would install a security system complete with cameras to safeguard against future unannounced visits. Third, I would establish a new bank account at an alternative financial institution with which they had no connection. And fourth, I would embark on a life I had deferred for years. My next destination was the local hardware emporium. The proprietor, Mr. Summer, had been acquainted with me for a considerable duration, owing to my perpetual procurement of items for repairs at Max and Lena's residence. This occasion, however, was markedly different. "Mrs. Artois, what brings you here today? Another crisis with your son?" he inquired, his tone reflecting a familiarity born from having discreetly observed my misguided generosity. "No, Mr. Summer," I replied. "This time it pertains to my own dwelling. I require the replacement of all my locks, and I desire them to be of the utmost quality." He regarded me with surprise, but posed no further questions. While I was perusing the selection of locks, his son, Ethan, who specialized in security system installations, approached. It felt like destiny intervening. "Ethan," I stated, "I also require the installation of surveillance cameras, the entire comprehensive setup. The expenditure is of no concern." As they made arrangements for the installation the following day, my mobile device chimed with an incoming call from an unlisted number. It was Lena, using another person's phone, as I had previously blocked her number subsequent to our prior day's contentious exchange. "Renata, it's Lena. Please do not disconnect. We need to converse like mature individuals." "Proceed," I responded curtly. "Listen, I comprehend your distress regarding the wedding. It was a misjudgment. Max and I have discussed it, and we wish to rectify our actions. How about we arrange a special dinner to commemorate our union with you? We could host it at your residence. We could prepare a meal together, as we used to." The calculated manipulation in her voice was so transparent that I almost felt compelled to chuckle. "Lena, precisely how much rent do you currently owe?" The ensuing silence on the other end confirmed that I had struck a sensitive chord. Well, it amounts to 2 months, a total of $1,000. However, Renati, I am not solely contacting you for that purpose. We genuinely miss your presence in our lives." "Do you miss me, or do you miss my financial contributions?" I inquired directly. "Both," she responded with an unexpected degree of candor. "Rena, I will not deceive you. Yes, we require your financial assistance, but we also cherish you. You hold significance in our lives." "If I am so significant," I countered, "why was I deemed unimportant enough to attend your wedding? Why am I not important enough to receive a call that does not solicit funds? When was the last instance you contacted me merely to ascertain my well-being?" Another silence descended, a tacit acknowledgement that neither of us could readily recall such an event. "Lena, I will articulate this matter to you only once. For a period of 3 years, you have treated me as an emotionally sentient automated teller machine. You exploited me, you disregarded me. You subjected me to humiliation, and ultimately, you perpetrated an egregious insult. Now that my financial resources are dwindling, you suddenly profess to love me. Renote, please, I interrupted her. There is no please. You made your decision when you determined I was not sufficiently distinguished to be present at your wedding. Now I am making mine. I terminated the call and powered down my device entirely. I had no desire for further disruptions on this day designated for my liberation. That afternoon, I patronized the same beauty salon I had not visited in over a year. My appointments were consistently rescinded due to either an urgent need arising from Max or Lena, or because the funds I had earmarked for my personal indulgence were repurposed for their crises. Mrs. Richter, my esteemed hairstylist, Cynthia exclaimed. What a pleasant surprise. I had presumed you had forgotten about us. I did not forget you, Cynthia, I assured her. I simply overlooked the fact that I too am deserving of pampering. I indulged in the complete treatment, a haircut, colouring, a manicure and a pedicure. For the first time in many years, I allocated funds for myself without experiencing any sense of culpability. As Cynthia worked on my hair, she shared details of her life, her children and her aspirations. It was remarkably refreshing to engage in a discourse that was not predicated on Max and Lena's requisites. You appear stunning, Mrs. Richter, she remarked upon completing her work. But more profoundly, you exude an aura of freedom. Has something positive transpired? Indeed, Cynthia, I confirmed. I have finally acquired the ability to decline requests. Upon my arrival home that afternoon, a vehicle I did not recognize was parked in front of my residence. My heart momentarily quickened with apprehension, suspecting Max and Lena might have returned with reinforcements. However, as I drew nearer, I observed an older woman seated on the steps of my porch. Mrs. Richter, she inquired as I exited my car. Yes, that is I. May I be of assistance? I am Eleanor Brooks. I reside next door. We have been neighbours for years, yet we have never had the opportunity to converse. Yesterday I perceived rather boisterous voices emanating from your home, and it caused me concern. Is everything satisfactory? Her genuine solicitude resonated deeply within me. Here was an individual I scarcely knew, demonstrating more interest in my welfare than my own offspring. Please come in, Mrs. Brooks, I invited. I will prepare some coffee for you, and I shall recount a narrative that you will find scarcely believable. While preparing the coffee, I divulged the entirety of my predicament. Eleanor listened intently, offering occasional nods without interruption. Upon concluding my account, her eyes welled with tears. Mrs. Richter, she stated, you acted appropriately. I encountered a comparable circumstance with my daughter 5 years ago. I too believed it incumbent upon me to subsidize her adult existence. I also harbored the conviction that they would not reciprocate my affection if I withheld financial support. What transpired? I inquired. I ceased the monetary disbursements when I realized they only initiated contact when they required something. Initially, it was arduous. They resorted to emotional coercion and blackmail, attempting to instill guilt within me. However, after 6 months, my daughter extended a genuine apology. Presently, we maintain an authentic relationship grounded in affection, not pecuniary matters. Her words instilled in me a sense of optimism and validated my recent decision. Do you believe Max and Lena will eventually comprehend? Perhaps they will, perhaps they will not, she replied candidly. However, that is no longer your responsibility, Mrs. Richter. Your paramount concern now is to embrace your own life. That evening, for the first time in 3 years, I retired to bed without the burden of anxiety regarding Max and Lena's financial solvency for rent, sustenance, or their capricious desires. I retired contemplating my own aspirations, my objectives, my future, and I experienced a depth of rest I had not known in years. The following day, Ethan and Mr. Summer arrived precisely at 8 o'clock in the morning to undertake the lock replacement and the security system installation. Throughout their work, my telephone persistently rang, originating from various unknown numbers. Lena continued her attempts to reach me via different devices, but I had cultivated a newfound proficiency in disregarding communications that did not align with my current disposition. "Mrs. Richter," Ethan remarked as he positioned the cameras, "this system will provide you with absolute peace of mind. You can monitor remotely via your mobile device who approaches your residence, even when you are absent. Furthermore, should an unauthorized intrusion occur, an immediate alert is dispatched to the authorities." The irony was not lost on me. I was implementing a security apparatus to safeguard myself from my own son, yet the sting was significantly less acute than before. It served as a practical measure to preserve my recently acquired tranquility. During their work, I resolved to undertake an activity I had postponed for an extended period, contacting my sister Diana in Chicago. Our connection had attenuated because, invariably, our conversations devolved into recitals of Max and Lena's achievements, the financial outlays I had directed towards them, and my pride in my capacity to provide assistance. I now recognized that our discussions had transformed into financial accounting, masquerading as familial updates. "Renaid," Diana responded, her voice tinged with surprise. "Sister, how are you faring? We have not conversed in months."
I am well, Diana. Better than well, in fact. I am contacting you to inform you that I have finally regained my senses. I recounted the entire narrative to her, commencing from the inception, the clandestine nuptials, the profound humiliation, the consultation with legal counsel, and my resolution to cease financial disbursements. Diana listened in silence. Upon my conclusion, her response was unanticipated. "Renaid, sister, it was long overdue. Each time we spoke, it pained me to hear you extol the financial contributions you made to them, as if affection could be quantified in monetary terms. I wished to convey something to you, but I was uncertain how. What did you wish to impart? Max never spoke of you with warmth when I encountered him at familial gatherings. It was invariably, my mother assisted me with this, or my mother procured that for me, but never I miss my mother or I love my mother. It was as if you were a service provider, not an individual. Her pronouncements were painful, yet it was a necessary suffering, akin to a physician cleansing an infected wound. It caused discomfort, but was integral to the healing process. Do you realize what else I observed?" Diana continued. "Lena consistently spoke of you in future tense. When Renate is no longer present, we can renovate her home. Or, upon inheritance, we shall invest in the business." It was as if they were anticipating your departure to truly commence living. This revelation struck me with the force of an icy deluge. They not only perceived me as an ATM, but also as a transient impediment, separating them from their expected inheritance. While I endeavored to secure their happiness, they were charting their future without my involvement. Following my conversation with Diana, I sat in my kitchen, processing this torrent of information.
Years of marriage to a man who genuinely adored me, 35 years of single-handedly raising my son after my husband's demise, and 3 years of subsidizing 2 adults who viewed me as a $100,000 obstacle. The doorbell rang, and observing the new cameras, I saw it was Elilana, holding a mug. I opened the door, and she presented me with a freshly brewed coffee. "I thought you might appreciate some company after everything you shared yesterday," she said, offering that sincere smile I had come to value. We settled in my living room, and Eleanor shared further insights from her own experiences. My daughter uttered precisely the same sentiments to me that Lena professes to you. You are akin to a second mother to me. We hold a special place in your heart. Everything will eventually be ours anyway. These are rehearsed phrases, Mrs. Richter. They learn them from the playbook of emotional manipulation. Do you believe such a manual exists? I inquired, half jokingly. Not officially, but it appears everyone consults the same edition. The inaugural chapter involves making her feel indispensable. The subsequent chapter dictates the creation of perpetual financial emergencies. The third chapter prescribes questioning her mental faculties when she offers resistance. We shared a laugh, though it was tinged with bitterness. It was simultaneously amusing and tragic to recognize such predictable patterns in the conduct of our own offspring. Did you ever experience remorse for discontinuing the financial support? I asked Eleanor. Every single day for the initial 3 months, she responded truthfully. But then I began to witness the outcomes. My daughter was compelled to secure a second employment. Her spouse relinquished his weekly golf excursions and commenced seeking supplementary work. They learned to subsist within their financial means, and more importantly, they comprehended that I was an individual, not merely a resource. That afternoon, I resolved to undertake an act I had postponed for an extended period, visiting my late husband's grave. I had consistently devised pretexts to avoid doing so, citing either an urgent requirement from Max or Lena, or the belief that the taxi fare could be more judiciously allocated to one of their crises. The cemetery was serene and picturesque. Robert's headstone appeared somewhat neglected, a consequence of my absence for cleaning over several months. I seated myself on the grass adjacent to his marker and addressed him as if he were present. Robert, my dearest, I fear I lost myself for a time. After your departure, I channeled all my energy into Max. I aspired to be the preeminent mother, erroneously believing this would compensate for his paternal absence. However, in that pursuit, I fear I neglected to be myself. A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a sense of being heard. Our son has transformed into an individual I scarcely recognize, or perhaps he has always been this way, and I was unwilling to perceive it. His wife is well, you are aware of her disposition. The funds you bequeathed for my peaceful existence, I expended them in their care. But no longer, my love. I have acquired understanding. I attended to his grave, replacing the wilted flora with fresh arrangements, and lingered for an additional hour, simply savouring the tranquility. For the first time in years, I felt no compulsion to rush home to address a crisis involving Max and Lena. Upon my return, 3 vehicles were again parked directly in front of my residence. My heart quickened, but this time I was prepared. The surveillance cameras indicated the presence of Max, Lena, and 2 other individuals I did not recognize. All appeared agitated, engaged in animated discussion amongst themselves and gesturing towards my home. I remained in my vehicle. Instead, I contacted my legal counsel, Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber, they are present at my residence once more. This time they have brought additional individuals. What course of action do you advise? Remain in your vehicle, Mrs. Richter, he instructed. I shall arrive promptly and shall contact the police. Following our discussion yesterday, I have initiated proceedings for a temporary restraining order. They are prohibited from entering your property. Minutes later, Mr. Weber arrived, accompanied by 2 police cruisers. I observed the officers engaging with Max and Lena. I witnessed my son gesturing emphatically. I observed Lena weeping once more, but this time her tears evoked no emotional response from me. One of the officers approached my vehicle. Madam, you may exit safely. Your guests will depart immediately. As I alighted from my car, Max shouted at me from the street, Mum, this is preposterous. We are your family. You cannot involve law enforcement concerning your own son. Max, I replied with a composure that even surprised me. Family does not resort to threats of legal action for mental incompetence. Family does not breach the privacy of individuals' homes without authorization. Family does not treat their mothers as automated teller machines. Lena shrieked from across the street. You will reimburse us for everything you owe us. We have joint financial obligations. You cannot simply abandon us in this manner. Mr. Weber interjected. Mrs. Brooks, any future communication must be channeled through my office, and I strongly advise you to consult with legal counsel before issuing collection threats, as my client possesses comprehensive documentation of all voluntary payments made over a 3-year period. I watched them depart in their vehicles, defeated yet not entirely resigned. I recognized that this confrontation was not concluded, but for the first time in this protracted situation, I felt a sense of confidence. I had professional support, I had emotional solace from Eleanor, and most importantly, I possessed mental clarity regarding what was equitable and what was unjust. That evening, Eleanor extended an invitation to her residence for dinner. I met her daughter, who was visiting, and was afforded the opportunity to witness firsthand the nature of a healthy familial relationship. They communicated with mutual respect, inquired genuinely about each other's lives, and shared moments of laughter. Throughout the entire evening, the daughter made no requests for financial assistance. I had harbored similar aspirations for Max, I confessed to Eleanor after her daughter had departed. And perhaps you will achieve that one day, she responded. However, he must first comprehend that you are an individual deserving of respect, not merely a source of income. For the first time in several weeks, I retired to bed with a sense of optimism regarding the future. The ensuing days were characterized by an unusual period of serenity. The surveillance cameras revealed Max and Lena traversing past my residence multiple times daily, occasionally at a reduced speed, or at times parking for brief intervals, but without disembarking. It conveyed the impression that they were meticulously observing my daily regimen, seeking the opportune moment for their subsequent maneuver. Mr. Weber had advised me to meticulously document each of these occurrences, so I maintained a detailed log, including the date and time. Their persistence will ultimately benefit our case, he had remarked. Each instance they appear after being instructed not to approach strengthens our claim for a permanent restraining order. On Friday morning, I was calmly partaking in my breakfast when the doorbell sounded. The cameras displayed a young woman impeccably attired, holding a folder and exhibiting a professional demeanor. I did not recognize her, but something in her bearing suggested that this was not a social call. "Good morning, Mrs. Renati Richter," she stated as I opened the door. "I am a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We have received a report indicating that you may be in a precarious situation, and we are required to conduct a wellness assessment." My blood ran cold. Max and Lena had escalated their actions. It was no longer solely a matter of threats from private legal representatives. They had now involved governmental agencies. "May I ascertain your identification?" I requested, striving to maintain my composure. "Certainly." She presented an official identification card that appeared authentic. "I am Mrs. Schmidt, a social worker. May I enter and converse with you?" I granted her entry, cognizant that refusal would likely prove disadvantageous to my position. Mrs. Schmidt took a seat in my living room and extracted a form from her folder. "Mrs. Richter, we have received reports suggesting significant alterations in your financial conduct, that you have severed communication with your family, and that you have exhibited indications of paranoia by installing superfluous security systems. We have also been informed that you have declined medical and legal assistance from your loved ones." Each carefully chosen word was designed to portray me as a mentally impaired elderly woman. I recognized Lena's characteristic writing style in the phrasing. She had always possessed a particular aptitude for manipulating language to achieve her objectives. Miss Schmidt, I stated, mustering all available dignity, I wish to contact my legal counsel before responding to any inquiries. Madam, this is not a legal interrogation. It is a wellness check. If you have nothing to conceal, there should be no impediment to conversing with me. The assertion, if you have nothing to conceal, ignited my ire. It echoed the rationale, employed by individuals who perpetrate abuse to justify their intrusions. If one is innocent, one should not object to the violation of their privacy. Miss, I am contacting my lawyer. You may wait here or return at a later juncture, but I will not provide any responses in the absence of legal representation. I contacted Mr. Weber, and he arrived within 20 minutes. Upon his entry and his observation of the social worker, his expression hardened. Miss Schmidt, he stated after verifying her credentials, I trust you possess a court order authorizing your presence here, as my client is under my legal counsel, and any unauthorized inquiry constitutes harassment. Sir, Mrs. Schmidt responded, her confidence noticeably diminished, we have received reports from concerned family members regarding the lady's well-being. It is our obligation to investigate. What family? Mr. Weber inquired dryly. The same family that attempted to coerce her into signing a power of attorney without legal representation. The same family that unlawfully entered her residence and perused her private documents. The same family that excluded her from significant events while subsisting on her financial resources. Mr. Weber retrieved a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. Herein lies comprehensive documentation of my client's financial and emotional abuse, the funds illicitly withdrawn from her accounts over a 3-year period, systematic social ostracization, and emotional blackmail. If an investigation is warranted, it is not my client who requires scrutiny. Mrs. Schmidt perused the documents with increasing discomfiture. It was evident that the information she had been provided did not align with the reality presented before her. Mrs. Arthur, she said finally, can you elucidate the reasons for your abrupt cessation of financial support for your son? Because I ultimately discovered they were exploiting me, I responded plainly. Because I realized that to them I was not a mother but a bank account. Because I was weary of financing the lives of individuals who perceived me as an obstacle. But do you not consider it your responsibility to assist your family? The question was infuriating. Miss Schmidt, my responsibility as a mother was to raise my son until he reached the age of 18, to provide him with an education, and to equip him with the necessary skills to become an independent adult. My son is 35 years of age, married, and perfectly capable of self-sufficiency. Subsidizing his adult life is not my obligation. It is my prerogative, and I have elected to discontinue doing so. Mr. Weber interjected. Miss Schmidt, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old adult to be incapable of meeting his own rent obligations without the assistance of his 71-year-old mother? Mrs. Schmidt hesitated before responding. I could discern that she was re-evaluating the entire situation. Mrs. Richter, she inquired after a pause, do you manage your own financial affairs entirely? I can furnish you with my bank statements, my investment portfolios, and my tax filings. Everything is current and in order. Do you reside independently? As you can observe, I maintain the cleanliness of my home. I attend to my physical well-being. I operate my own vehicle. I cultivate wholesome social relationships with my neighbors. Do you take any prescribed medications? Merely vitamins and, on occasion, aspirin. I do not suffer from any medical conditions requiring pharmaceutical intervention. Mr. Weber added, My client has recently undergone extensive medical examinations as part of our legal proceedings. She is in perfect mental and physical condition. Mrs. Schmidt closed her folder. Mrs. Based on our discussion and the documents I've reviewed, I see no indications that you are at risk or require intervention. I'll be closing this case. After she departed, Mr. Weber and I remained in silence for a few minutes. Renati, he finally stated, this situation is going to keep worsening. Max and Lena are spending funds they don't possess to engage professionals in an attempt to have you officially declared incapable of managing your affairs. Does that imply they are in a desperate state? It signifies precisely that. What other recourse do they have? They could initiate legal proceedings for incompetence. It's an expensive and difficult path to victory. However, if they manage to find a judge who is sympathetic to their cause and a psychiatrist willing to provide testimony supporting their claims, they could succeed in having a guardian appointed. The mere thought sent shivers of terror down my spine. They could assume command of my assets. They might attempt it, but we have compelling proof demonstrating your complete mental capacity and that their motivations stem from avarice, not genuine care. That afternoon, I contacted Diana to share my frustrations. My dear sister, she remarked after hearing my account, have you observed the lengths to which they are prepared to go for monetary gain? They are jeopardizing familial bonds, expending resources on legal counsel and medical professionals, tarnishing their own reputations, all to regain access to your bank accounts. Her words prompted introspection. Max and Lena had unequivocally exposed their true characters. There was no turning back. The possibility of a sincere reconciliation was non-existent. To them, I had never been a mother or a respected mother-in-law. I had consistently been perceived as nothing more than a source of funds. This realization, while painful, was also incredibly freeing. I no longer had to question whether my decisions were correct. I no longer had to harbor guilt over safeguarding myself. They had demonstrably proven that my emotional and physical welfare held less importance to them than my financial resources. That evening, Eleanor paid me a visit, bringing a delightful surprise. She had invited her acquaintances from the garden club to meet me. Renate, she introduced, these are my friends, Cynthia, whom you already know from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. We have all encountered comparable predicaments with manipulative family members. We spent the evening exchanging our experiences. Maria had to establish firm boundaries with a brother who perpetually solicited funds from her. Carmen had severed ties with a daughter whose visits were exclusively motivated by financial need. Alfreda had been compelled to revise her will after discovering that her grandchildren viewed her as their personal retirement fund. What causes me the greatest anguish, I confessed, is not the loss of the money I provided them, but the dawning realization that the affection I believed I had never truly existed. Renati, Alfreda declared with the profound wisdom of her 80 years, genuine affection cannot be bought or sold. If it required payment, it was never authentic. Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. She spoke the truth. I had purchased attention, not love. I had financed an illusion. Do you know what I have come to understand? I asked my newfound companions that being surrounded by people who do not love you is a more profound form of loneliness than being alone. At the very least, when I am by myself, now I am in the company of those who genuinely care. Laughter filled the room, and we raised our glasses in a toast to our shared, hard-won insights. That night, after my new friends had departed, I sat in my garden, lost in thought. The stars overhead seemed to sparkle with an unprecedented brilliance, or perhaps it was simply that I was observing them with newly awakened clarity. For the first time in my adult existence, I was entirely independent financially. I had no dependencies, no financial obligations to anyone but myself. And rather than instilling fear, This reality ignited a sense of exhilaration within me. I could embark on travels whenever the mood struck me. I could undertake renovations on my home. I could indulge in acquiring attractive attire for myself. I could contribute to charitable causes that held personal significance for me. I could invest in my own future rather than subsidizing the present lives of ungrateful individuals. Freedom tasted like hope, and for the first time in many years, I felt a genuine desire to plan for what lay ahead. A month after my consultation with the psychiatrist, I believed I had finally triumphed in the conflict. I had established a pleasant and consistent routine. I calmly savored my breakfast while perusing the morning paper. I dedicated time to tending my garden, followed by lunch with Eleanor or one of my new confidants. In the afternoons, I devoted myself to pursuits I had long neglected. I had resumed painting, a passion I had cherished before becoming Max and Lena's personal financial manager. However, one Thursday morning, as I was applying paint to the floral subjects on my new easel, Mr. Weber arrived at my residence, his countenance etched with a somber expression that sent a chill through me. "Renate, we must speak. Max and Lena have formally initiated legal proceedings for mental incompetence in family court. They are seeking the appointment of a legal guardian to oversee your affairs." Those words struck me with the force of falling stones. I had anticipated this possibility, but hearing it articulated aloud rendered it terrifyingly tangible. Does that imply they can assume control of my finances? If a judge determines that you are incapable of managing your own affairs, then yes, he could appoint Max as your legal guardian, granting him complete dominion over your financial matters. I sank heavily onto the sofa, feeling the immense weight of the most profound betrayal I had ever experienced. My own son was attempting to legally declare me mentally incapable in order to seize my wealth. Mr. Weber, what evidence could they possibly possess? You yourself have witnessed my complete lucidity. They have obtained statements from 3 individuals who assert that you have exhibited erratic behavior. Furthermore, they have submitted unpaid medical bills that you purportedly failed to settle, and medications that you allegedly hoarded without consuming them. But that is patently false. I have no outstanding medical bills, nor have I hoarded any medications. I understand, Renate, but they have fabricated convincing documentation. They also possess a statement from Dr. Lehman, who claims you refused to cooperate with a psychiatric evaluation, which they are interpreting as evidence of mental deterioration. The deception was diabolical. They had transformed my refusal to undergo an unnecessary examination into proof of a mental illness. They had utilized my instinct for self-preservation against them as evidence that I required protection. Who are these 3 witnesses? Mr. Weber consulted his files. Lena, of course, a neighbor named Mr. Davis, and an individual who claims to be your pharmacist, Mr. Green. Mr. Davis was the gentleman residing across the street, a rather disagreeable man who had consistently harbored animosity towards me due to the occasional parking choices of my friends in front of his property. Mr. Green was indeed my pharmacist, but I couldn't fathom what grievance he might hold against me. "I need to speak with Mr. Green," I told Mr. Weber. Something is not right. We proceeded to the pharmacy together that afternoon. Mr. Green greeted me with an expression of surprise and evident nervousness. "Mrs. Richter, it is a pleasure to see you. How are you, Mr. Green? I was informed that you signed a statement alleging that I exhibit erratic behavior regarding my medications." His face flushed to the color of a ripe tomato. "Mrs. Richter, your daughter-in-law visited a few weeks ago and inquired about your prescriptions. She expressed concern, stating that you were behaving unusually. And what precisely did you convey to her?" I explained that you only purchase vitamins and occasional aspirin, that you do not have any regular medical prescriptions. However, she insisted that this was indicative of you neglecting your health. Mr. Weber interjected. Mr. Green, did you indeed sign a document? She presented me with a form that stated I was confirming Mrs. Richter's irregular medication purchases. I assumed it was for her health insurance or a similar purpose. I was unaware it was intended for legal proceedings. My own pharmacist had been deceived into signing a document whose full implications he did not comprehend. Lena's capacity for manipulation was truly boundless. Mr. Green, I implored, I require you to provide a written statement detailing precisely what transpired and clarifying that I have no issues concerning my medications. Of course, Mrs. Richter, I sincerely apologize for this profound misunderstanding. Following our visit to the pharmacy, we proceeded to confront Mr. Davis. Upon knocking on his door, he received us with palpable hostility. What is it that you desire, Mr. Davis? Mr. Weber inquired. I understand you provided a statement concerning my client's conduct. And you are correct, I did. That woman is unhinged. She has been acting bizarrely for weeks. Could you elaborate on the specific behaviors you observed? Installing surveillance equipment as if she were residing in a war zone, entertaining unfamiliar visitors incessantly, berating her family members in public. I realized then that Mr. Davis had grossly misinterpreted and distorted every detail. The cameras had been installed for my personal safety. The unfamiliar visitors were my new acquaintances. The public outbursts were a result of my defending my home against Max and Lena's unauthorized intrusions. Mr. Davis, I stated, do you comprehend the reason behind my decision to install the cameras? No, and frankly, I do not care. To protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law, who repeatedly breached my home without permission and subjected me to threats. That is precisely what a deranged individual would claim, he retorted with animosity. There was no avenue for rational discourse with him. His assertion was predicated on superficial observations, maliciously interpreted. That evening, Mr. Weber and I convened to strategize our defense. Renati, we absolutely require an independent psychiatric evaluation. I have a colleague, Dr. Moore, who specializes in assessing mental capacity. She can officially verify that you are entirely competent. What if Max and Lena have already bribed the judge? What if none of this holds any weight, because they have already made the decision to declare me mentally unfit? Renate, the legal system, while not flawless, is not entirely devoid of integrity. We possess substantial evidence of your mental acuity and their underlying financial motivations. We are going to contest this vigorously. The following day, I attended my scheduled appointment with Dr. Moore. She was a woman in her 50s, possessing kind yet discerning eyes. Mrs. Richter, I will be posing a series of questions and administering tests to ascertain your mental capacity. Please take your time and respond with complete honesty. For a duration of 2 hours, she meticulously questioned me on my memory recall, my reasoning abilities, my grasp of financial matters, and my overall emotional health. She also administered cognitive assessments and requested that I solve mathematical and logical problems. Mrs. Richter, she concluded, your performance on these assessments far exceeds the average for individuals of your age. You are not only mentally competent, but your cognitive functions are indeed excellent. Doctor, why do you believe my family is resorting to such extreme measures? Based on the information you have provided and the documentation I have reviewed, this appears to be a classic instance of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it is a far more prevalent issue than many people realize. I departed from the consultation feeling both vindicated and profoundly saddened. The professional confirmation of my mental well-being was a considerable relief, yet it also underscored the stark reality that the lawsuit was both legitimate and necessary. That afternoon, Eleanor orchestrated an emergency gathering of all our friends from the garden club. Upon relaying the news of the incompetence lawsuit, each of them expressed profound indignation. "Renati!" Maria exclaimed, "we will unequivocally testify in your defense. We have spent considerable time with you over the past few weeks, and it is evident to anyone that you are thriving." "More than thriving," Cynthia added. "You exhibit greater clarity and possess more strength than many women in their 40s whom I encounter." Alfreda, with the wisdom accumulated over her 80 years, gently clasped my hands. "Renati, my dear, what your children are attempting is hardly unprecedented. For generations, avaricious offspring have sought to have their parents declared mentally unsound in order to seize their fortunes. However, you possess an advantage that many such victims lacked. You have documentation, legal representation, and a circle of friends prepared to provide testimony on your behalf." Her words instilled a flicker of hope within me. I was not facing this ordeal in isolation. I was supported by an army of formidable women who had personally witnessed the remarkable transformation I had undergone. "Do you know what the most disheartening aspect of this entire situation is?" I remarked. "It is Max and Lena's willingness to irrevocably shatter any future possibility of reconciliation for the sake of financial gain. Even if I were inclined to forgive all that has transpired thus far, there can be no return from this. And perhaps," Cynthia responded, "that is for the best. At least now you possess an unequivocal understanding of their true nature, enabling you to proceed accordingly." That night, for the very first time since this harrowing ordeal commenced, I allowed myself to weep. It was not a weeping born of sorrow, but rather of profound grief. I was bidding a final farewell to the son I had once believed I knew, to the cherished dream of a loving family, to the poignant illusion that my unconditional love was reciprocated. Yet, concurrent with this release, a new resolve began to coalesce within me, an unyielding determination to prevent myself from being stripped not only of my financial assets, but also of my inherent dignity and my personal freedom. The battle had officially commenced, but I was unequivocally prepared to engage in the fight. The trial convened 3 weeks later. I awoke at an early hour, donned my most impeccable black suit, and met my reflection in the mirror with a resolute gaze I had never before possessed. Today, not only my mental faculties would be judged, but also my inherent dignity as an individual, my fundamental right to live free from abuse, and my intrinsic value, independent of my financial standing. Mr. Weber arrived at 7 in the morning to meticulously review our strategic approach one final time. "Renati, remember, the burden of proof rests squarely upon their shoulders. It is incumbent upon them to demonstrate that you are incapable. Our sole objective is to establish that you are not. And what if the judge is already predisposed against us? Judge Miller has cultivated a reputation for fairness. I have thoroughly researched his past rulings, and he does not automatically favor families. He is steadfastly dedicated to safeguarding the rights of the elderly." We arrived at the courthouse at precisely 9 in the morning. In the hallway, I observed Max, attired in a new suit that he had likely acquired for this specific occasion, and Lena, dressed in black as if she were attending a funeral. Perhaps in a way it was precisely that, the funeral of our familial relationship. When our gazes intersected, Max averted his eyes, but Lena held my stare with a chilling detachment that underscored her perspective. For her, this was merely a business transaction. Their legal counsel was an older, distinguished gentleman, exuding the unshakable confidence that stems from a history of prevailing in similar cases. As he commenced his opening statement, his strategy became readily apparent. To meticulously portray me as a bewildered elderly woman, susceptible to manipulation by extraneous individuals, thereby estranging me from my loving family. Your Honour, he declared in a sombre tone, Mrs. Renate Richter has exhibited a discernible decline in her mental faculties in recent months. She has abruptly terminated all financial support for her family without any rational justification. She has installed superfluous security measures, driven by paranoia, and has isolated herself from her loved ones, evidently influenced by neighbours and legal representatives who are clearly exploiting her vulnerable circumstances. Each word had been deliberately chosen to artfully reframe my assertion of self-determination as mere dementia, and my pursuit of independence as the product of external coercion. Subsequently, they summoned their witnesses. Lena was the first to take the stand, and her performance was nothing short of Oscar-worthy. She wept as she recounted how I had undergone a complete metamorphosis, how I had become hostile and consumed by paranoia, how I had deliberately distanced myself from the family that cherished me. Your Honour, she declared, her voice trembling with feigned emotion, Renate has always been like a second mother to me. Witnessing her mental deterioration has been utterly devastating. We merely seek to assist her in obtaining the necessary care she requires. Lies, meticulously woven into a tapestry of convincing tears. As Mr. Weber conducted his cross-examination, the fissures in her narrative began to emerge. Mrs. Schuster, can you enlighten the court as to the last occasion you contacted my client without making a request for monetary assistance? Lena stammered. Well, we always discussed numerous topics. Can you provide a specific date? I cannot recall precise dates. Is it accurate that you and your husband proceeded with your wedding ceremony without extending an invitation to my client? It was a very intimate ceremony. Is it true that when my client inquired about the wedding, you informed her that only individuals of special significance had been invited? Lena's complexion flushed deeply. Those words were taken out of their intended context. What would constitute the appropriate context for informing your mother-in-law that she does not hold a position of special importance? She was unable to offer a coherent response. Max was the next witness. Observing him on the stand, taking an oath to speak the truth while simultaneously preparing to fabricate falsehoods about my mental state, was one of the most agonizing moments of my existence. This was the child I had raised single-handedly, the one to whom I had dedicated my entire life. My mother has consistently demonstrated exceptional generosity towards us, he testified. However, in recent times, she has become erratic and irrational. We are convinced that she is being influenced by individuals who are exploiting her. As Mr. Weaver proceeded with his cross-examination, Max's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. Mr. Richter, can you specify the approximate amount of money you have received from your mother over the past 3 years? I do not know the exact sum. Does an amount of $33,400 sound approximately correct? Perhaps she has always been quite generous. And how many instances can you recall visiting your mother without soliciting funds from her? The silence that ensued was deafening. Is it factually correct that you and your wife entered my client's residence without her explicit permission and proceeded to examine her private documents? We were concerned for her well-being. Is it true that you brought legal counsel to exert pressure on her to sign over a power of attorney? We wish to assist her in managing her financial affairs. Do you, at 35 years of age, require assistance from your 71-year-old mother to cover your rental payments? Max was unable to respond with any semblance of dignity. Mr. Davis then testified regarding my alleged erratic behaviors, but when Mr. Weber pressed him for specific details, he admitted that he had never directly engaged in conversation with me and that all his purported information was derived from superficial observations. Dr. Lehman provided testimony, asserting that my refusal to undergo an evaluation constituted evidence of mental deterioration. However, Mr. Weber subsequently presented the documentation pertaining to our comprehensive evaluation conducted by Dr. Moore, which completely invalidated his conclusions. Subsequently, it was our turn to present our case. Mr. Weber first called Mr. Green, my pharmacist, who meticulously explained how he had been artfully deceived into signing a statement that misrepresented my purchasing habits for medications. Dr. Moore then delivered her expert testimony regarding my exceptional mental state and presented the results of the cognitive tests, which had been unequivocally flawless. Mr. Summer, proprietor of the hardware store, testified regarding my mental competence, clarifying that my decisions to revoke automatic transfers were entirely rational and had been executed with proper procedure. Eleanor and my companions from the garden club offered testimony concerning my newfound clarity, my revitalized spirit, and my capacity to cultivate healthy social connections. Finally, it was my turn to take the witness stand. I stood with an air of profound dignity and proceeded to the witness stand, acutely aware of the cumulative weight of 71 years of life experience, of wisdom painstakingly acquired through hardship, and of a strength discovered amidst adversity. Mr. Weber skillfully guided me through my testimony, allowing me the latitude to recount my entire narrative in detail, the $33,400 expended over a span of 3 years, the profound humiliation of being conspicuously excluded from the wedding ceremony, the relentless emotional manipulation I endured, the flagrant violations of my personal privacy, and the insidious legal threats that were leveled against me. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Weber finally inquired, "Why did you make the decision to discontinue financial support for your son and daughter-in-law?" "Because I finally came to the unequivocal understanding that what I was receiving from them was not genuine love," I responded, my voice clear and resonant. It was, in essence, a commercial transaction masquerading as a familial relationship. My financial resources were welcomed, but I, as an individual, was not. Do you harbor any regrets regarding your decision? My only regret is that it took me so inordinately long to arrive at it. Max's attorney attempted to portray me as disoriented during his cross-examination, but I responded to each of his inquiries with unwavering clarity and precision. When he endeavored to insinuate that my recent friendships had exerted undue influence over me, I articulated that for the first time in many years, I was engaged in relationships predicated on mutual respect, rather than on financial self-interest. In his concluding argument, Max's legal counsel adamantly asserted that I was a victim of external manipulation. Mr. Weber's rebuttal was utterly devastating. "Your Honor, what we have witnessed here today is not the unfortunate circumstance of an incompetent elderly woman, but rather the inspiring narrative of a woman who has at long last discovered the fortitude to extricate herself from years of pervasive financial and emotional abuse. The plaintiffs have presented not a shred of credible medical evidence to substantiate claims of mental incompetence. What they have, in fact, presented is their profound frustration because their primary source of income has resolutely exercised her legal and moral prerogative to safeguard her own resources." Judge Miller retired to deliberate for a period of 2 hours that felt an eternity. Upon his return, his expression was grave, yet his pronouncement was unambiguous. After a thorough review of all the presented evidence, he commenced, "It is patently evident to this esteemed court that Mrs. Renate Richter is in full possession of her mental faculties. The professional psychiatric evaluations conducted unequivocally confirm her cognitive competence. Her financial decisions, however distressing they may be for her family, are entirely rational and fall well within her legal rights." My heart began to pound with an increased intensity. Furthermore, the judge continued, The evidence strongly suggests that this lawsuit has been initiated not out of genuine concern for Mrs. Richter's well being, but rather as a direct consequence of financial motivations. Consequently, the court hereby completely denies the request for guardianship. I had emerged victorious. I had not merely won the lawsuit, I had also reclaimed my freedom, my dignity, and my fundamental right to live unburdened by the oppressive actions of those who purported to love me. Emerging from the courthouse, I observed Max and Lena engaged in a heated discussion with their legal representative. Lena's gaze, imbued with raw animosity, met mine before she turned and departed. Max glanced my way one final time, and for a fleeting instant I perceived what might have been remorse, but it was irrevocably too late. That evening, Eleanor orchestrated a joyous gathering at my residence, inviting all our cherished companions. We raised our glasses, toasting justice, to liberty, and to the indomitable sisterhood of resilient women who champion one another. Ranada, Elfrida imparted to me, today you achieved more than a legal victory. You reclaimed your life. Her words resonated profoundly. For the first time in a great many years, the horizon ahead was entirely my own. I was free to explore. I was free to cherish. I was free to create. I could exist without trepidation, without culpability, without coercion. 3 months hence, I divested myself of my home and relocated to an exquisite dwelling situated conveniently near the city's core. I allocated half of my financial resources to benevolent institutions dedicated to safeguarding seniors from familial maltreatment. With the remaining moiety, I embarked upon the life I had perpetually envisioned. I traversed the continent of Europe, enrolled in artistic instruction, and became involved with charitable endeavors. I never again received any communication from Max or Lena. Through third parties, I learned they were compelled to inhabit a more modest dwelling, and that Lena had secured employment for the first time in years. Perhaps these trials would impart to them the value of diligent effort and self-reliance, a lesson my benevolence had failed to convey. On certain evenings, while gazing at the celestial expanse from my new veranda, I reflect upon the individual I was a year prior. Timid, subjugated, laboring under the delusion that affection could be purchased. That iteration of myself has ceased to be. In its stead, a new consciousness has awakened, one that has grasped an essential verity. Genuine affection is invariably priceless, and freedom's cost is never excessive. My name is Renati, and I am 72 years of age. I have at long last comprehended that the paramount individual requiring my adoration and safeguarding is, in fact, myself. Should my narrative have resonated with you, consider extending your support through a contribution, enabling me to craft further accounts. I extend my sincere gratitude in advance. And you, how would you have navigated this individual's predicament? I eagerly anticipate hearing your perspectives, so please feel at liberty to share them in the comments section. I am perpetually interested in your collective thoughts. Additionally, kindly inform me where you encountered this particular story. For an abundance of life narratives akin to this one, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Numerous other stories await your discovery. With heartfelt salutations until our next encounter, M.